Hi friends, in the last section we have learned how to make the connections in the SQL developer and tone. So now we will learn the PLSQL blocks, which is the basic unit of PLSQL. PLSQL is case insensitive language. So we can write both in upper and lower language, but for the more readability, we should choose one language. It could be uppercase or the lowercase, but try to write in one language. So what is the PLSQL block? A PLSQL block is defined by some keywords. These are declare, begin, exception, and end. Declare is the declarative part, begin is the executive part, and exception handling is the exception is the exception handling part. So the declarative part is the optional one. We can ignore that. But if it is present, then it should be the first one. And begin part is the mandatory part. It should be present in every case. So in here in then exception handling is also the optional part, but if it is there, then it should be after the begin statements. What the declarative part contains? The declarative part contains the variables and the constants, which we need to use in the further options. So it has variables and constants. So these variables and constants can be used in further part. So we'll here declare in here we'll write them in here declarative part. In the execution part, there are the main statements which would run and will return you the possible results what you have written, and it could contain SQL and PLSQL both. There could be blocks inside many blocks inside one block, so that would call as the nested block. So inside one begin and end, there could be many begin and end, and if that case is there, then it is a nested condition. So in the exception part, exception handling is done for handling the exception, for handling the unavoidable errors in the program which occurs while runtime. What does runtime mean? Runtime means when we execute the code at that time, if any error happens, like I would give you one example is when no result is found by that SQL. So that is the runtime error. When the code has been run, at that time SQL found that there are no results for the query. So it will raise an exception, and if we have handled that exception, then it will go into the exception handling part. So it is also a very necessity of a very, I would rather say it is required part of the PLSQL block. We should handle every exception in the exception handling part. So from the exception handling, if any error goes into the exception handling part, it will not return from this block. There are different type of blocks. Some are we'll differentiate into two parts. There are named and the anonymous block. The above we have discussed is the anonymous block. It doesn't have any name, and it is not saved inside our database. So I have to declare it every time, then I have to run it, then I get the result. But the name blocks are the blocks which are stored inside the database, and we do not need to create them every time. We can just fetch them from the database, then we can execute. Let me give you an example. The best example for this are the procedures of the database and the functions. So these procedures and the functions are stored into the databases. Then at the time of calling we can use the objects, and then we can call them for the for having the results. So in this section we have covered the PLSQL blocks. Try to learn that how we what the declare part, how what we can write in the declare part, what we can do in the begin, exception and end. We'll make a study of this, we'll make an activity of this in the next part, but first you should try it. Thank you, have a nice day.